Alright, hello. I'm Daniel. I'm going to be showing a quick little video about how I made a forum signature. Now, this is the signature that I originally made. It's a stock from a music video. I thought it was a pretty well made, pretty nice stock. It would work good in a signature. So I'm just going to go ahead and demonstrate how I made it. Alright. I started off with a 400 by 130 canvas, filled it with a basic gray color, and then I pasted my stock in. This is the original stock. I've resized it. It was originally a lot larger. I cropped it down, fit it exactly to the size of my canvas. I duplicated it, set it to the multiply blend mode, 35% opacity. I duplicated it again, set it to overlay blend mode, 27% opacity. And what those two layers did was they boosted the contrast and made it a bit darker, because I didn't like how sort of washed out it was, so I definitely wanted to have it darker. I then duplicated the layer once again, got out the burning and dodging tools there, right here. The burn tool made this darker, right here too, and the dodge tool was used here and here and here. Any area that's lighter. As you can tell, there was quite a bit of change in color, contrast, that sort of thing after I did that. It really helped with the lighting. It's something I definitely recommend if you're doing a stock that has lighting from one direction, but you want to boost it because it's not very powerful. I then got out a C4D render, and I'm not entirely sure of exactly which one I used, but here it is after I used the liquify filter on it. I used the liquify filter to get sort of the swirls that you see going on right here and here, sort of give it a little bit of an abstract texture. I set it to soft light blend mode, which made it blend in and made it the outsides darken. What the soft light blend mode does is it gets rid of the 50% grays values inside of whatever stock you're placing down. I duplicated it, and I set that version, that layer, to color. Color will bring out the color of the stock in all the layers behind it. My next step was to get some fractals for lighting. Now this is one by Morbid Sheep on the Planet Renders forums. I blurred it with the Gaussian blur. Probably about 10 pixel radius on this one. I'm not sure because I didn't save that. I did this a while back. I set it to color dodge. What color dodge does is it makes the colors a lot more intense when it makes the colors of the stock a lot more intense below. It really brings it out. It's good for really harsh lighting when you know you can go back and fix it to make it look better later. The next layer was an orange I'm sorry, not C40. It was an orange fractal. I set it to linear dodge. It gave a lot of nice lighting. It comes down. The lighting comes down from this way in the stock. So I wanted to place it up here and give it some flow. You can see these little bits of the fractal really give it some nice direction. It points you back if your eyes wander. I then started adding some more lighting around the front of the focal point. I wanted to bring some attention to the front of him, even though the lighting was coming from behind. I brought in some of my own lighting doing that. I set the layer to screen, used a reddish orange fractal. I'll set it to normal just so you can see what it originally looked like. can't really tell much of a difference, but it helps with the lighting to set things to screen. It really brings out the whites. The next step was adding in another fractal. This one you can see right here, along here. It's got these little lines of light points, and those are really, really good for doing direction. You need to watch those though. If you have too many, or they're pointing in some odd way, like the majority of these are pointing like this, and you're going to follow this line. It's an implied line of focus. But, I mean, I have this one. It's not ideal, but it's not going to lead you away too much. But sometimes it will lead you away from the focal. You really need to watch that. Now, my next step was to give the piece some more depth. What I did for that was I used a splatter brush. It didn't matter what color I used at that point in time, because I was going to do a clipping mask over top of it. Now what I did is I went and got a stock that I've put up on a few different forums. It's a really nice lighting stock. I Gaussian blurred it, probably about a 15 pixel radius, and made sure that the lighting matched up with what was going on already in the stock. Now what you can see here, the focal's hair is lit from behind and above. So if you imagine it in sort of a 3D thing, it's behind him, like pointing down in the back of his head. And I sort of wanted that to show through in the splatter, so I used the stock in a way to do that. Excuse me. The next thing I did was I boosted some of the lighting. I used another lighting stock. This might have been the same one. Yes, it is the same one. I did the same blur. Oh, I'm sorry. Messing everything up, aren't I? Alright. Let me go back to my history. I'm sorry. I just gotta fix this a little bit. Alright. So, I took the same stock. I moved it. So it would create more lighting. It's set to screen 100% after the blur. And you can see how the lighting is coming down. It sort of takes the detail out of things, but the way I did it, I know I can bring that back with gradient maps and other adjustments. Next up was adding in some more fractals. Now this is a color burn fractal. I don't normally use color burn because it really sort of makes everything ugly with bright stocks. I use it for making some lighting and some depth effects. I really liked it for this because it gave good texture right here. And you have this nice flow coming down, and it's sort of like a U shape right here, and you have other U shapes and S shapes, like this one right here. It sort of follows up with these specks. And that's why I used that. The next step was taking the whole piece, set it to linear dodge 33%, and that was done after I used a motion blur on it. The motion blur was probably between 30 and 50 to 60 pixels, somewhere around there. Not exactly sure again, but that really helped with some of the lighting and detail and texture. It helped the background look farther away and helped the lighting in front look a little bit better in my eyes. My next steps were the adjustment layers right here. I have my first gradient map, and we'll take a look at this one. It's this blue to yellow gradient map. It's a good complementary color scheme. I custom made this. I suggest making a few custom gradient maps that you know will help with bringing out lighting. I have a few of those stashed away somewhere. This one, the complementary colors really help boost contrast if you use it correctly. This one actually did a reverse because it didn't look quite right the other way. It sort of had, like, you associate blue with dark and yellow with light because of the sun, sort of. So that didn't really work. So I reversed it, set it to color at 25% right here. Second gradient map. This was this black to sort of a beige orange color. I reversed it again because if I hadn't, it would have done that instead of been the correct direction. What's over here is going to be what your shadows are, and what's over here is going to be what your high tones are, and these are your mid tones. So you want to align it correctly with what you're doing. I set it to overlay, which takes out the 50% grays and boosts contrast, and I set it to the opacity of 42%, which I felt was a pretty good opacity. If I had set it to 100%, it really overexposed the whole thing, but I wanted to have some of the colors and a little bit of the texture and exposure boost that it gave me. I had a bunch of gradient maps on here. The next one, it was a black to white gradient map. I really like this gradient map because it's just so versatile. I set it to linear light, which is one of those in this overlay to hard mix settings. They take out the 50% gray again. Now that really helps with, it increases the contrast a whole bunch with this particular gradient map. I set it to 35% because again, anything higher would really overdo the effect that I was trying to get. Alright. There's another gradient map. This one really brightens it. It is, I can tell you already without looking at it, because this is one of my favorite gradient maps, is the default Photoshop built-in orange to sort of a violet purple color. I think they call it violet. Oh, yes, it's the violet orange gradient map. It's really helpful. I know a lot of people like to use it. It's just a great gradient map if you use it correctly. If you overuse it, it's a little bit goofy looking. So I use that. It's set to screen, which brings out a lot of brightness. If I hadn't, it would have taken out a whole bunch of brightness. So there it is at screen. It's 42% because if I hadn't, see, it would just be too bright and overexposed. And I just don't like that effect. It's a mistake a lot of people make doing that. The next gradient map, and not final, but nearly there, is, I believe this is the beige gradient. Nope, this is not the beige gradient map. This is the pastel yellow, green, blue gradient map, and it is reversed, so the darker color is over here, the lighter color is over here. It's set to multiply for darkening. It leaves the blacks in and takes out a lot of the whites, leaves the midtones alone. I set it to 67%, which is about as close as you can get to 2/3 in Photoshop. It gave a really nice look to it, I think. The next adjustment layer was a photo filter layer, and this was underwater, 48% set to preserve luminosity. I use this photo filter for a ton of things. If I'm doing a really warm piece and I want to soften it a little bit, I use that. It definitely helps because it's got sort of a greenish blue, and it works very well for what I like it to do. The next thing I did was to add the text in, and it's Times New Roman, pretty basic font. It's pretty small, but I really wanted it to be in there. It's the lyrics from the song the video is from, and it just says "Turn the Shovel Glass," which is, as I said, the lines, and it's got the title of the song capitalized. I thought that gave it a better look. I definitely wanted to add something to it to make it blend in better. So I went and I grabbed, I believe it's this same stock right here, unblurred, and I overlaid it, or not overlaid, I clipping masked it to the text layer beneath, which gave it pretty good color. It fit in with the rest of the stuff. you can see right, I wanted to really demonstrate how I did this little bit right here. Right, you can see there's lots of stuff obscuring this side, but as the text starts right after, it gives it a little bit of a flow across horizontally right here. And right here is where two of the fractals dot lines intersect. And that highlights Cheval and leads you off into glass, which is really what I wanted to show the words being. Cheval, glass, big, and mirror. The final two layers are another two gradient maps. This one is a black to green. Again, it's reversed, so the colors look correct. It gives it a greenish tint to this without making it sickly green, because you definitely don't want to do that. It's set to screen to brighten it. Brightens a whole bunch under screen. The opacity is 58% to avoid overexposure. The last layer is another gradient map. You can really tell that right now gradient maps have helped a whole lot with color and lighting. This would not look good without it. It's black to white, the basic default gradient map. It just helps with the brightness a bit. Definitely the contrast. And I just wanted to show you what it would look like without the gradient maps before I wrap up. And the photo filter. I'm just going to get rid of all these adjustment layers. It'll take a second to catch up because of the computer is not exactly the fastest in the world. See, it's a huge, huge difference without the gradient maps. They really help this. They really make or break some pieces. And this one, it definitely makes it or breaks it. I would not have ever finished this if it hadn't been for gradient maps. If I hadn't known what I could do with it. So that's about it. Hope you enjoy this and helped you out a bit. You can find this stock fairly easily if you know my contact information on a forum that I'm on, or on Facebook, or any instant messenger. Talk to me. I can get you this stock. It's a pretty big stock. It's really nice to use. It's got some nice elements. It's got multiple people in it. Anything else you want to talk to me about, I'm free to talk about, especially graphics and Photoshop and design, photography things. I really love to talk about that stuff. So send me IM, send me an email or a personal message. Get in contact with me if you want, and I hope you have fun photoshopping and gimping.